Everyone ready? Judges ready? All right, let's go. Good morning. I would just like to thank you all for being here and waking up for this early morning class to be here to judge. This is going to be a fun round, so let's get right on into it. So first, just the resolution is the U.S. should stop supporting Israel. And we're just a few definitions. Should is a good idea. Should stop supporting means we're going to take this a military aid route. The United States has promised $38 billion in military aid to Israel by the year 2028. And we should not go through with this package. And then Israel is a Jewish state. Our weighing mechanism today is going to be net benefits to the United States. So for my first contention, I have the U.S. would benefit from less responsibility. And number 2, balance of power. And number 3, Middle Eastern stability. So for my first contention, the U.S. would benefit from less responsibility. Israel does have the military ability to defend themselves. They have the Iron Dome, which has 90 to 100% accuracy, and it's intercepted hundreds of rockets that have been fired from the Gaza Strip in recent years. They also have David's Sling, which is for medium-range rockets and cruise missiles. And their third system is the Arrow, and this is a long-distance long-range defense system for ballistic missiles. And this is according to the New York Post. This is backed up by the New York Post. And also, Israel has nuclear weapons capability. According to the Middle East Policy Council, they started having this capability back in the 60s. They were the 6th Middle Eastern power to have these nuclear weapons capabilities. And then also under this, Israel has the most powerful military in the Middle East right now. And this is from Business Insider. And this leads right into my second contention, which is the U.S. would benefit from a balance of power. By the U.S. continuing to beef up Israel's military, it creates an imbalance of power in the Middle East. And Israel, it's been made clear that they are capable of defending themselves. According to Business Insider, the Israel Defense Forces has a qualitative edge over all of the other militaries in the region, as well as a highly capable Air Force. And so this continuing to beef up the power of Israel's military can lead to more unrest and more conflicts in the area. According to Ethical Culture, the constant violence supported and maintained by arms shipments allows extremists to sabotage any deal that could possibly be made. And so just by not beefing up Israel's military more, it will create a more balanced power within Middle Eastern countries. So the other surrounding countries won't feel so threatened by Israel's military. And then for my third contention, I have that the U.S. will benefit from Middle Eastern stability. I think that we can all agree that peace in the Middle East is something that the countries of the world have been striving for many years. And by pulling out and not providing this military aid, Israel will have to rely further on its potential peace partners in the Middle East. So Saudi Arabia is one potential peace partner that Israel should be able to capitalize on. Saudi Arabia hates Iran, which is one of Israel's biggest threats in the Middle East right now. In 2015, also, Jordan has become a huge peace partner for Israel because in 2015, Israel and Jordan signed a historic water deal and water cooperation agreement, and this was from the times of Israel. And in this water agreement, this is called the Red Dead Project. And this will supply water to Israelites and Jordanians in order to replenish the dwindling water supply in Jordan and replenish the Dead Sea. And then the last potential peace partner that Israel has is Egypt. Egypt is in the lineup to be a major customer for some of Israel's natural gas. And this is according to the Harazit, which is an Israeli news source. And so by lessening the military power or just not providing more military aid, partners will be more likely to step up and be true partners of Israel and not be so inferior. So the U.S. would benefit from 1, less responsibility, 2, balance of power, and 3, Middle Eastern stability. So for all these reasons, I think you can feel confident in voting for the affirmative today.
All right. Oh, wait a second. Are my judges ready? Is my opponent ready?
Ready?
Of course. Okay. I just have a few questions for you. That was a wonderful speech. Can you just clarify your tags once again so I make sure I have them down correctly?
My first tag is the U.S. would benefit from number 1, less responsibility, number 2, balance of power, and number 3, Middle Eastern stability.
Okay, and yeah, that's it. Thank you. Oh, thanks for setting it too. Alrighty. Over here. Okay, are my judges ready? Is my opponent ready? Alright, let's get started. How do you start this? All right, there we go. All right, so once again, thank you guys so much for coming out today. It is going to be an absolutely amazing round, and thank you to all of those who are flowing. I will definitely like to see your nice criticism afterwards. So I agree with the weighing mechanism today and all the definitions that she has brought to the table. And as the negative today, it is my job to negate to you as to why the U.S. should not stop supporting Israel militarily. First, I will be working through my opponent's case, and then I will be moving into my own. So her first contention was less responsibility. Israel may have the military that they need, but they need more. Yes, it's been working out, but for how long? If it's enough, why are they still being terrorized by the regions around them? It's not enough. They need more. If it was enough, this wouldn't be happening. Her second contention is the balance of power. There needs to be an imbalance of power, so for one, we can have a foothold in their region that can ultimately help the United States combat ISIS. And her third contention was Middle East stability. What? Want Middle East security? Help Israel, help the United States continue to combat ISIS by strengthening the Israel army. Peace partners are not guaranteed to help. And moving into my own case, my first contention is their need for a home. Jewish people have not had a home for nearly 2,000 years. It all began in 139 BCE as all Jews were ordered to be taken out of Rome. Moving on to 38 BC, where anti-Jewish riots erupted in Alexandria, where countless Jews were killed. Fast forward to 1921, the KKK started the anti-Semitism movement. 1933, the Nazis begin the brutal slaughter of 6 million Jews. 6 million human lives. And according to the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum, there were over 6 million displaced people. Where are these people to go? Israel. The Jews literally have had an absolute need for their home, and just as they needed a home for over 2,000 years, Harry Truman put it best here. Today, not tomorrow, we must do all that is humanly possible to provide for a haven for all those who can be grasped from the hands of Nazi butchers. Free lands must be open to them. Supporting Israel militarily is supporting the right of Israel to keep the state as to which they literally need. Israel is their home. My second contention is the need for security. The U.S. should continue supporting the Jews militarily because there is a clear need for security. In fact, there have been countless times where Arab nations have attempted infiltrating the Israeli state. For example, the War of 1948. Even after that, there was the War of 1967, which Israel was against 13 different Arab countries. What goes to say they won't do it again? Well, that's a great question. They already are. Over the course of 2011, 680 rockets, mortars, and Grad missiles were fired from the Gaza Strip into Israel. In 2016, 12 vehicular ramming attacks and 100 stabbing attacks were thwarted by security forces. Since the 13th of September 2015, 55 people have been killed in terrorist attacks and 812 innocent people were injured. Israel needs the full-on military support of the United States to combat not only these terrorist attacks, but future terrorist attacks. The future of these Jewish lives are in your hands. There is an obvious need for security, and with the continued help of the United States, that is something we can provide. My third contingent is the need for support. Lastly, there is the need for support. When a country militarily involves themselves into another country, there is a clear showing that we agree with the country's values. Want to know what Israel supports? Democracy, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, women's rights. These are all good things that we in the United States and the U.S. should, in return, support a country such as Israel militarily because we support their views. Israel needs the support to be a shining light in areas with no democracy, no freedom. The U.S. has an obligation to proclaim liberty and freedom across the world. And how do we do this? We help support Israel. And how do you support Israel? You send the money and you send the military help. I now stand down for cross-examination and firmly urge negative ballot. Thank you. Ooh. I broke it. Can you fix it?
Right. Opponent ready?
Heck yeah.
Judges ready? All right, let's go. Okay, thank you so much for presenting that negative case, Sydney. I just have a few clarifying questions for you today.
Yes.
Okay, so you brought in several historical references and a couple quotes. Do you have sources for those?
The quote was from Harry Truman.
Okay.
So I mean that was just the quote, and the source of the 6 million people being relocated was from the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum.
Okay. And you, in refutation of my case, you said that the imbalance of power is good, correct?
Yes, but only in this, this is the exception of imbalance of power because there literally needs to be an imbalance of power in the Middle East.
Okay, thank you. And also that they need more than they already have, more military support, right?
Yes, they do need more because if their military was stable enough, then maybe they would be stopping the terrorist attacks that are happening on them. Not only do they need more, but them getting more is us definitely reaping the benefits of having a foothold in the Middle East.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Of course.
Okay, so opponent ready? Judges ready? All right, let's get started. All right, thank you so much, Sydney, for your negative case today. I don't have much time, so I'm just going to jump right into it. So in Sydney's refutation of my case, she, for my first point, I said that the United States would benefit from less responsibility. And I brought in how Israel can, in fact, defend themselves. And she brought in how they needed more military support. However, I made it clear that they have the capabilities to defend themselves with the Iron Dome, David's Sling, and the Arrow, which are all short, medium, and long-range ballistic missiles defense systems. And so also she, for my second point, how this imbalance of power is good. But I think that we can all agree that instability in the Middle East can cause more instability. And for this imbalance of power, it creates more tensions between even potential peace partners that Israel has, such as Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt. And then for my third point, she said that this would help strengthen Israel, but instability in that region is going to help all of the countries. This is a case for net benefits to the United States, and it will help the United States for more stability in that region that will be caused by Israel's military independence. So for her first contention, she brought in that the Israelis need a home, and I agree, this is their home, and they have the full capability of defending that home. She brought in a really good history lesson about the history of the wars in Egypt, but since 1948, Israel has been its own Jewish state, and they are able to support themselves through these defense systems and through their top-notch Air Force. And it's time for them to have that independence. For her second contention, she said that they need more security from Arab infiltrations, and she did bring in a point about rockets from the Gaza Strip, but I would like to point you back to my first contention, where I brought in the statistic from the New York Post about how the Iron Dome, which has 90 to 100% accuracy, has intercepted hundreds of rockets fired from the Gaza Strip in recent years. And for her third point about supporting Israel's democratic views, once again, I would just like to point out that Israel is capable of taking care of themselves. They have the military power, and they have the drive and the want to, and they have the military strength with their defense systems, their military just hands-on and reserves, and then their Air Force. And so for these reasons, I think you can feel confident in voting for the affirmative today.
Are my judges ready? Is my opponent ready? Okay. Alrighty, then let's get started. So thank you guys once again for coming out today in this 8 a.m. and for all of us showing up today. And thank you so much again to those people who are flowing. Once again, I'm going to greatly appreciate your criticism afterwards. So let's get right into this. So my opponent's first contention about less responsibility. Yes, they have the capabilities to sustain themselves, but once again, why aren't these capabilities working? Like I said, there were 680 rockets and mortars and grad missiles were fired from the Gaza Strip. And in 2016, that is just last year, there were 12 vehicular ramming attacks, 100 stabbing attacks, and in 2015, 55 people were killed in terrorist attacks and 812 innocent people were injured. 812 innocent people injured. Why is this happening if their military can support themselves? They need more support. The United States needs to do more. The more the United States does for Israel, the more Israel does for the United States. And her second contention, more tensions? There are already tensions in the Middle East. This isn't going to hurt anything. There needs to be something to calm these tensions, and this is what will happen. Literally, when Israel gains the power that they need by the military of the United States and the military help and aid of the United States, then this will calm the tensions around them, because the Middle East will finally realize that the United States does have a solid foothold in the Middle East, and this is something that we need. Not only that, but it's not just a solid foothold, but it's a foothold that believes all of the things that the United States believe, as freedom of speech, freedom of religion, democracy, women's rights. This is one of the only regions in the Middle East to believe just like the United States, and once again, when we show their support for the United States, we're going to have that solid foothold as to which we need. And then she agreed with that my military, she agreed that the military was enough, but it isn't enough to support themselves. Like I already said, it's pretty obvious, and they simply need more military support. And if they were capable of taking care of themselves, like my opponent said, then I'm sure they would be taking care of themselves, except they're not. And I gave some examples for that, along with the ramming attacks, stabbing attacks, and the 812 innocent people that were injured. So I'm going to go ahead and get into some voters because this is my last speech. And the first is simply another quote by Harry Truman, as to which he says, "The question of Palestine as a Jewish homeland goes back to the solemn promise that had been made to them by the British in the Declaration of 1917, a promise which has stirred the hopes and the dreams of these oppressed people. This promise, I feel, should be kept, just as all promises made by responsible, civilized governments should be kept." And that was Harry Truman. Allow for the United States to be a responsible, civilized government in deciding as to whether or not this promise to Israel of keeping this land should be kept. Supporting Israel militarily would lead to countless security that would immensely help them to keep their promised land. And my second voter is obligation. Supporting Israel militarily is supporting democracy, freedom, women's rights, religious liberties. They need our military to continue to uphold these standards and to share these standards with the surrounding areas. I now stand down and urge a negative ballot. Thank you all so much once again.
Judges ready? Opponent ready?
Yes.
All right. Thank you all once again for coming out and judging this early morning round. It's been a lot of fun. There's been some good clash. So Sydney, thank you so much for presenting your case as well. So I just want to jump right in and look at my contentions one more time and remind you what those were. So once again, the weighing mechanism was net benefits to the United States. And for my first contention is the United States can benefit from less responsibility by letting Israel have that military independence that they are capable of. They can defend their own borders. They have with the Iron Dome, and they also have David's sling and the arrow. My second contention is balance of power. The U.S. would benefit from a balance of power, and by balancing this power in the Middle East, it would help create more stability and help other countries not to feel other potential peace partners not to feel so threatened by Israel's military. And then the third, the U.S. could benefit from Middle Eastern stability. And I think peace in the East is something that the whole world strives for and would bring stability. And so through Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and possibly Egypt, those are more peace partners that can be brought in. So my first voter, my opponent's voters today were, number one is, it was a really long quote, so I only caught some high points, I hope, but hopes and dreams and how promises should be kept from the British government to Israel. But I would just like to point out that the United States did not make those promises to Israel. And this is something that Israel is capable of keeping up themselves. They now have the military capabilities. And for her second voter was, we have an obligation to democracy. Once again, I would just like to point out that the U.S. has helped Israel get to the point that they are now, and it's time to let them fly and to just spread their wings and know that they are capable of defending themselves and of keeping the democracy that they have today. So I have three voters for you today. Number one is Israel's independence. We should strive to help Israel be independent, and we have, and now they're capable of that. And so it is time to let them show their responsibility and how it would be a better balance of power. And for my second voter, I have equity. All of these contentions I brought before you today will help bring equity to the power in the Middle East. This is very important for stability and for less conflicts over there. And then my third is peace. My third voter is just peace. The United States has been over in the Middle East for decades trying to help figure out a way for peace. And by letting Israel be more independent, this would be possible. So I thank you all once again for judging and being here, and you can feel confident in voting for the affirmative.